It was a warm summer evening when high school students from an American school decided to have an incendiary party at a country cottage. The place was perfect, isolated from the hustle and bustle of the city, surrounded by forest and immersed in an atmosphere of mystery and privacy. The youth gathered, taking with them the mood and the desire to spend an unforgettable time. Music blared, lights flickered, and fun filled every corner of the house. But what started as a night of joy and entertainment soon turned into a nightmare. Late in the evening, when the party was in full swing, a group of students decided to go to explore the surrounding forests. Armed with flashlights and full of zeal, they entered the depths of darkness. The walk through the forest started fun and exciting. The students laughed and talked, enjoying nature and the adrenaline of adventure. They went deeper and deeper into the forest, and the world around them seemed mysterious and full of unexplored possibilities. But as they moved on, they began to notice strange noises coming from the dense thickets. Rustling, crying and ghostly whispers were woven into the night wind, causing students to feel unwell and anxious. One by one, they began to notice strange figures flashing among the trees. Their silhouettes were elusive, and they seemed to float through the night fog. All the students felt a chilling horror that penetrated into their bones. They decided to return to the cottage, but it turned out that all the ways they had come had disappeared. The forest seemed to be playing with them, confusing the roads and luring them deeper into its embrace. A sense of loss and despair gripped the group, and they realized that they were stuck in the gloomy maze of the forest. Fear and paranoia began to take over the students. Their hearts beat faster as vague silhouettes and dark figures watched them from the darkness. Trying to keep calm, they continued to look for a way out. The students continued to wander in the maze of the forest, becoming more and more entangled in its dense undergrowth. The air became heavy, the atmosphere saturated with sinister forces. All their attempts to find a way out were in vain, and they became prisoners of this dark corner of nature. The forest was getting darker by the minute, and the sounds were getting more intense and stranger. Dark figures emerged from the shadows, slowly approaching the students. These were the spirits of the long-gone inhabitants of the forest, who were attracted by a strange rite held earlier in the same area. The students were surrounded and immersed in a whirlwind of paranormal phenomena. They saw ghosts, heard their screams and moans, which penetrated into their souls. Fear gripped them with every second, and the hope of salvation gradually faded. And then, at the darkest moment, one of the students, especially sensitive to supernatural phenomena, noticed a faint light in the distance. He gathered the remaining students around him and headed towards this light as the last thread of salvation. They made their way through the thickets and overcame obstacles, feeling that the forces of evil were trying to hold them back. But their determination was stronger. Finally, they came to a clearing where an old abandoned lighthouse could be seen in the distance. The students, exhausted and frightened, approached the old abandoned lighthouse, but their joy at finding the light source was short-lived. As they got closer, they noticed that the lighthouse was emitting an unusual greenish light that created an unnatural aura around it. The students decided to enter the lighthouse. Their curiosity exceeded the fear that gripped them. They got through the rusty doors and went inside. The stairs leading to the upper platform were steep and musty. As they ascended, the sounds and echoes became stronger, bouncing off the walls of the lighthouse. At the top of the lighthouse, the students found a strange room dotted with symbols and mysterious signs on the walls. In the center of the room was an artifact resembling an ancient stone. It looked like it was a source of greenish light that they had seen from afar. They approached the artifact, and then suddenly everything froze. The room was filled with an ominous silence, and the walls began to crack. The artifact began to emit powerful energy pulses, and its light became dazzling. Suddenly, the artifact exploded, spraying its energy all over the room. The walls began to shake, and greenish smoke began to escape from the cracks, which filled the room. The students tried to run out of the room, but were trapped inside. Sinister laughter filled the air, and the spirits of long-gone forest dwellers appeared in front of them. Their distorted faces and gigantic bodies were a source of horror and disgust. Students rushed to the door, trying to get out, but it turned out to be locked with an unusual and mystical lock. Their panic only intensified when they realized that they had fallen into a death trap. The walls of the room began to come to life and wriggle, like a living creature trying to confuse and absorb students. Images and figures on the walls began to move and turn into distorted and terrifying images. The voices of spirits penetrated their ears, whispering hideous and gloomy promises. The students felt their powers leaving their bodies, leaving them weak and helpless before these supernatural forces. Their hearts were beating violently and uncontrollably, fear filled every cell of their being. The spirits began to approach, hovering above the floor and slowly descending towards the students. Their distorted faces were full of anger and thirst for revenge. They touched the students. Their cold touch caused goosebumps and horror. Some of the students began to lose consciousness under the influence of this powerful paranormal force. One by one, the students fell to their knees, clutching their chests in fear and despair. But at the last moment, when it seemed that everything was lost, one of the girls remembered the pendant that she wore around her neck. This pendant was a family heirloom associated with ancestral spirits. She grabbed the pendant and held it out, emitting a glowing sign from it. In response, the sinister spirits retreated, and the room began to quiet down. The girl was able to free her companions from captivity. With the remaining strength, they ran out of the room and down the stairs of the lighthouse. Around them, the forest was calm, as if nothing was happening. They were able to get out of this nightmare, but their experiences remained forever in their memory. The students who remained alive returned to the cottage, where their friends and the rest of the students were waiting for them with excitement and anxiety. They told about their terrible experience and warned everyone to never enter the abandoned lighthouse. Since then, this lighthouse has become known as a cursed place where shadows and spirits dwell, waiting for the next victims. The legend of what happened to a group of students has remained in people's minds, reminding us that there are worlds that we cannot understand and that it is better to leave alone.